And welcome back. It has been a few days, and I do apologize for the delay in content as we sit inside of our Project Ram here, our 2012 Red Ram, otherwise known as the Sleeper Apple and or Candy Apple. And last video that we left off on, and if you're watching these in series, we replaced the wind module, which is the wireless ignition node, aka the ignition switch, and programmed 2 new sets of fobs for that ignition switch. And what we've been doing for the last about the last week, about the last 2 weeks at this point, is just getting the revised tunes from our tuner, loading them onto the vehicle, driving the vehicle 20 to 30 miles, light driving, spaced out over a few days, and then we data log it for a period of time. Usually I've been putting about 20 miles on the tune, and then I'll log about 5 to 10 minutes worth of data once the engine's up to operating temperature and we've reached mileage, and then I'll send that data to our tuner. He's been revising things and sending it back. So where we stand with that portion of this build is part throttle pulls, according to my tuner, look good. And again, my tuner is Jay Green, as I've mentioned before. And we're almost to the point that once we are, I should say not almost, but we are to the point that once we get past the break-in period of our project, of our engine rebuild here, I should say, we're to the point we need to start doing some mixture of partial throttle pulls and wide open throttle pulls. So until we get to that point, it's going to be kind of more the same, where I'm loading up a tune, putting 20 to 30 kind of miles on it, just doing a bunch of light driving, doing errands, things of that nature, logging it and sending it to him. So originally I was looking to do about a 500-mile break-in. And I think what we'll do is we're going to settle on about a 300-mile break-in. We got about 140 miles on the engine since the rebuild. Once we get up to about 300 miles, then we'll do an oil change at that point, send it off to analysis, put fresh oil in, and then we'll work on getting our wideband O2 in. Once we have that, then we can start looking at getting some wide open throttle pulls sent off to the tuner so we can continue to make adjustments. But that's where that sets. That's why there's been a little bit of a delay in content, because it's literally just been me receiving data from the tuner, uploading that new tune, allowing the truck to learn and correct its adaptives based on that tune, logging data, and then send it to the tuner and getting back a revision. So a lot of wash, rinse, repeat. You haven't missed anything. But today, getting back to the title of this video, you've seen me do this before in other Rams, but we are going to install a ProClip cell phone holder. I use these in all of my vehicles. I like them. They work great. I've put these also in several families' vehicles as well. And for our 2012 1500, just to show you some part numbers there, that is the item number, as you can see, for a ProClip angled mount. And it looks like this below. So inside the package, you get this. You get an alcohol prep pad. And you also get, as you can see it there, called a gap opener. I'll show you what this is here in a bit. You also get the instruction sheet that kind of shows you where that's going to mount. And you can see that dash pretty much falls right in line with the way our dash currently looks. So this mount, if we look at our picture here, there's our little outlet. This mount is going to fall, it looks to be right about in here, because it still gives us access to get to our vent control. So we'll kind of clip there, and you'll see on the end of this bracket you have kind of a little clip that'll grab an exposed lip that's right here in the back, and this part of it is going to go into a gap that we're going to create between the bezel bezel part of the radio on this front dash trim and this silver piece of trim here, because this piece of trim, if you're familiar with this, even though it looks like one piece, this center section is actually a separate piece of plastic that's set inside of the silver piece. And that's what this gap opener is going to be for. It basically looks like we're going to put it in here just like that. You can see we kind of created ourselves a gap, and that's going to allow us to kind of snap in place that end, that little straight end, that little 90-degree end of this mount. Now, I've shown this in my videos before, and it's just my preference in that I generally don't undo the adhesive strips on these, because I find, at least on the mounts that I use, that the tension on this is generally good enough to hold it in place. And we've got some future work coming up on this dash that's going to involve a replacement radio, among other things, and it's going to facilitate us having to potentially remove this mount. So I don't want to stick it in place just yet, and again, not having that sticky expose is going to help with some items in the future. Now, as far as the item that will hold onto the cell phone, because when you go to ProClip's website, it's going to be a multi-piece ordeal, whereas you're going to pick what they call kind of a base mount, or a mount, which would be this piece here, and then you're going to decide, based on the type, make, model, and cell phone you have, what type of holder you need for your cell phone. And I like to use what you see here, which is the universal adjustable one, and we'll get into more of this here in a bit. But what I want to do first is see about just getting this popped in place. So I'm going to get you set up on the tripod, and we're going to attempt to film this, and we'll see how it goes. So one moment. And welcome back. So I got you kind of balanced inside the two cup holders here on the console. But again, we've got our gap opener here. We've got our mount, our base mount. And we've got our hooked over edge here, which is going to, again, grab the edge on the outside here. And we've got this 90-degree with this little straight piece coming off, which is going to go into our gap here. So what I'm going to do is kind of get this end here clipped on first to this edge. And then we can just kind of push it and stretch it forward. And now we can just come in here with our little trim tool, our little gap creator as they call it. Almost. There we go. Okay, that got it. I don't know if you kind of heard that, but once you create enough of a gap in there, you can get that straight piece just to kind of push down. And what we can do, since we didn't undo our adhesive, is that we can then kind of come down here and just push on this a little bit and kind of get this holder kind of where we want it lined up. And that's it. That's as far as the installation. We're clipped here, and we're clipped in to the twin pieces here. Now, although you could see that with the tape not exposed, you can push on that. It takes a pretty good amount of force to get that to move, because it's got a pretty tight grip between these pieces of trim. So now that we've got that piece in there, I'll show you this part number again for what they call their universal holder. Now, it comes with a series of these 4 screws, which is going to screw into part of the plastic that's here. So you'll see on this mount, you've got 6 holes, all in patterns. And kind of what ends up happening is, and we'll have to undo this mount to adjust it, is that these 4 holes, while they line up, you can either have the mount one level this way, or you can kind of come down and have it one level this way. I think we'll go for the lower set of holes in our case, and again, a lot of this is preference. But when you're screwing these little tiny screws into this back piece of plastic, Just be warned that it is plastic that you're going into, so there's no need to get full level of strength on that. Now this mount, this universal mount, we're just going to use the Phillips screwdriver, and there's a screw right there in the center. We loosen this one up, we can get that. It is a captive screw, at least in this case it's a captive screw. You can see that center Phillips won't come out of there, but what we need right now is just this base piece. And then we're going to take this base piece here. You can see, again, it has the 4 screw holes there, which orient themselves only one way on this mount, which happens to be sideways in this case. And that will mount up with either the 4 holes on the top or the 4 holes on the bottom. However you do it, you're still going to end up, at least on this particular base mount, ending up using these 2 middle holes, whether you go up a little bit high or you go up a little bit low. Again, I think we're going to use the lower holes on this particular mount. And we could always come in here and change that if we find ourselves with a rather large, lengthy phone and want to pick it up a little bit, because one item you may run into, depending on the length of your phone, and if you use this, is this 115 volt outlet. And if that's the case, you can either come up a little bit with it, or you can even just slide this bracket up a little bit higher to kind of get away from this. Now, in our build, if you remember, this is here, but we've got it disabled. We don't use it. We don't have it hooked up, and we don't plan to have it hooked up. So in our case, we're fine with where it's at. Even if we do block it, it's no harm, no foul. And again, we're just threading in the plastic. I'm just getting them started. No need to go full torque on these again, because you don't want to strip it. And you can strip this if you go too tight with these screws. So while we're doing this, I made a comment that we've got some radio upgrades coming in the future. Now this is an 09 to, this is a 2012 model, so it falls into the 09 to 12 vintage of 1500s. And the reason why that is important is that as of 2013 and higher, Ram made a lot of electrical changes. They made a lot of multiplexing changes with communications and how things talk and so on and so forth. So if we wanted to maintain a factory radio that you see here, it has to come from an 09 to 12 vintage radio. So we could put in whatever style radios were available between 9 and 12. So anything from a baseline 1500 all the way up to a Laramie trim style radio will work inside this truck just fine. Now, I did find a place online that specializes in radios for this vintage Ram. They have them available. They can send me one that would be pre-programmed and ready to work. The problem is, again, we're stuck with the technology of the radios that came out at the time. So if we wanted to keep factory, there's only so far of an advancement of a radio we can get, and then we're kind of stuck that way. So with that being said, and knowing the cost that it takes to even get an upgraded higher trim level radio that would work, I am looking at some aftermarket alternatives. Now, as far as aftermarket, really my only requirements are is that A, it functions as a radio, and obviously B, it supports Android Auto, because I do use Android phones. I don't need a radio that comes with navigation in this case, because I have Google Maps and Waze and other applications that'll facilitate the need for maps. So we really just need a radio that works with Android Auto and gives us the ability to potentially even plug in an USB stick to play MP3 files with. So I'm looking at, again, aftermarket replacements. Now, we don't have steering wheel controls in this model Ram in our steering wheel, so we don't have that to worry about. So when we do the conversion, we're not going to need like any intermediate type adapters for a third-party radio to retain those controls, because again, we don't have them. So it's kind of no harm, no foul. Makes the install a bit easier, but don't worry. We'll video all that when it comes time to make that video, and we'll show you what we're going with. We're also looking at replacing all 6 speakers. This particular model of Ram, you got 2 speakers up in the dash. You got a speaker in each front door and a speaker in each rear door. So we got a total of 6, and we'll be looking to change all those out. So now that we've got our base mount for our base mount for our phone holder screwed into our base mount, what I'm going to do is just literally hold this back up there and retighten our Phillips screw in the center of our holder. And I may need to move you out the way to get this to line up. Yeah, I might be able to get into here. There we go. Okay, got it. Just want to tighten that up a little bit more to put a little bit more tension on that. There we go. Yeah, there you go. So now when I turn it and kind of pivot it, it does a pretty good job of holding itself in place. Now there's 2 more screws on this universal mount, which are right here, top and bottom. And when we loosen those up, it's going to allow us to take these side ears and kind of push them out and pull them in, and allow us to adjust them. I'm going to kind of get in your viewpoint here a little bit, just so I can get to these. And you can see what I mean there. You got a little bit of movement inside this universal mount to accommodate, wider phones and wider cases. So let me just grab my phone here. I do have a slim case on this, so it is a little bit thicker than a standard phone would normally be. And usually what I like to do is, let me pan you up a little bit so you can kind of see the top of the phone. Usually what I like to do is something like that. So kind of leave the sides loose, put the phone inside the ears here, and just kind of slide it down until the phone stops, but just kind of leave pressure, a little bit of light pressure on the sides here, and just let the bottom of the phone rest in the bottom of that holder. Now you can go down a little bit lower, like if you wanted to, you can kind of go down this way. But at least for my particular type of case, it kind of fits better if I just have the bottom of the case rest on the bottom of these grooves on the side of this mount. So now that we kind of have our side mounts where we need to be, gingerly take our phone out, and then we can tighten up our screws and kind of lock those ears in place. Again, this is just the universal one. They make several phone mounts. They have mounts if your vehicle is compatible with it and your phone's compatible with it. They do have mounts that have the built-in wireless chargers, and some that have the charging cable built into it. Again, I prefer this one because it means I can run whatever charging cable I want into whatever device that I need. And there we go. So what I may even do, since that's a little bit loose, is actually just kind of come in here, loosen these up a little bit, and just gingerly, ever so slightly, There we go. Push in. So it gets a little bit extra grip on the sides of this phone. Okay, that's feeling a little bit better. Got a little bit of drag in there now. You can see where the phones rest again at the bottom. I'm gonna go a little bit more drag on the side of this because again, I'd rather have it set a little bit tight and not run the risk of the phone, you know, falling out or popping out of the mount as you hit a bump or something on the road. Yeah, there we go. There we go. There you go, Coco. Now we've got a nice secure grip. You can see where I could just kind of start to set the phone on the top of it, slide it down to where the case kind of does a nice job of stopping us at the bottom, and that phone is nice and secure. Now, again, with that being said, that albeit we're kind of deviating from the instructions here where we're not exposing that adhesive tape on this bottom mount to facilitate us doing some future maintenance too here. And like I said, I've installed several of these and it's just my experience with it, but generally I find that again this bottom mount here is usually held in with enough tension that you usually don't need the double-sided tape on it, but you may. So again, your mileage could definitely vary on this. So with that being said, it's going to be a little bit of a different video. It's not going to be inside of the performance build list. I may create a different playlist to kind of put these items into, because again, we'll have this item. We've got the pending radio and speaker upgrade that we spoke about earlier, and some other cosmetic items, such as I'm also looking for a replacement steering wheel, because this has got the kind of vinyl steering wheel in it. And you can see up there, this is the original 2012, so it's just kind of starting to deteriorate and fall apart. And they make some really nice aftermarket ones that actually have like places to rest your thumb, where you can get a decent, nice grip on the steering wheel, which is, you know, something that we're definitely going to want once we start taking this thing to the track. Either way, I digress. I'm rambling on long enough. So that just kind of shows you, at least for this particular, which again is a 2012 Ram 1500. This is the mount, the base mount, and then of course we're using the universal cell phone mount to attach to that base mount. So a little bit different of a video for you today. As I stated earlier, we definitely got a lot more content coming up on our build series here. We're not done by any stretch of the imagination. We're just working through getting the tune situated and getting our break-in period situated. So we may come back with the break-in complete, or if we can get the steering wheel ahead before the break-in comes in, we'll do a video on replacing it with a newer one, and potentially the radio as well. It just kind of depends on where things fall on the schedule and what order items come in. With that being said, if you have subscribed already, I do thank you. If you have not subscribed, please consider doing so. Our goal is to get to that 3,000 subscriber mark by the end of the year, preferably even more than 3,000. But that being said, I will let you go, and I'll bring you back for the next one. Thank you much, and bye.